English and Italian, of course. Greek, a bit of German. English, Italian is okay. Italiano, va bene, va bene. But it's international press, facciamo tutto. Volete che cominci?
La stampa, ci siete tutti?
Are you all there? All here? I don't know, if you want to get started, I don't want to be respectless to the colleagues. But you are also waiting since a long time, I think. Okay. 3, 2, 3. Non ho capito. Certo. Sì, sono seccato.
Questa è donna, la seconda è donna.
Ok.
Moldavi sono loro due.
Oh, ok.
Lui e lei.
Thank you. Noi poi coordiniamo la sessione ministeriale. No, lei no vuoi. Sì. Hey, hello, hi, welcome. No, take this is better, this chair. Let's have a picture together. We can, abbiamo le mani. Great job. Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, I think we can start. We are here. Non è abbastanza domanda loro, no? Cominciamo?
Sì, aspetta, stava avendo giocato, però cominciamo.
Dai, cominciamo con le domande, no? Sì.
No, cominci tu.
Ok, all right. Ok.
Saluti, dai la parola a Sergio,
Sì.
I due ragazzi salutano e poi le domande alla fine.
Okay, look, I make a short introduction, who we are, what we did, and then give you the floor, and then we answer all the questions. I think there are 2 delegates also that are booked. Okay, so these 3 days almost, were absolutely inspiring. Oh, Jaya is coming. Just take a seat. I think you can stay here so you don't have the legs. It's more comfortable. Okay. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you to the colleagues to support and to help in this event. That was really difficult and inspiring. As you know, we had 8,700 applications, and we selected 400 young people from 189 countries. So this was a truly multinational event. It was the first in the COVID period. Extremely difficult to organize. Globally successful despite the let's say organizational complications. It was, I mean, at least for me as an experience, it was really difficult to face what's going on in the planet in 24 hours, having the people in front. G20 countries are discussing climate change primarily as a transition in the manufacturing, in the mobility, and the social behaviors, strictly connected to primary energy production, the way we move, the way we produce. There are differences, but those differences are not so big. And in the end of the day, we can sort of speak a common language. We have a common strategy. Decarbonizing, electrification, increasing substantially the renewable energy part in the energy mix. And then we might discuss whether we want to have continuity by using gas or by using accumulators, maybe selecting the different renewable energies. I thought this was a terribly difficult issue because, I'm a physicist in background. I was a scientist till 7 months ago. So when I started my job as a minister of the ecological transition, actually I had the impression to face a gigantic technological problem, gigantic, how to change the way our, let's say, rich society are working. And I started making all the calculations, the energy we pump, how do we ensure continuity, the stuff you have heard a lot of times. But then the more I was drilling down, the more I realized that maybe the biggest problem at the moment, or one of the biggest problems, is the global inequality. And in these 2 days, we have seen so much and so many global inequalities. We have seen so many problems that really I started having a doubt: is the ecological transition, the energy transition, a unique phenomenon, or really the definition changed depending on local circumstances? Of course, I knew realistically this should have been dependent on local circumstances, but you really have to go close and talk to the people and see how the local circumstances are different. So what came out today, there's a global inequality problem, a global justice problem that is hindering, kind of masking the climatic problem itself. Young people today have shown pictures, say, look, my grandma is cooking but burning whatever she has in the rubbish, and she experiences in-house pollution, whereas we are preoccupied by the outside pollution. And maybe they have to queue, the Lebanon girl said, the representative said, we have to queue 3 hours to fill the car. So this is amazingly different from what we have in mind from the G7, G20 perspective about the energy transition, the ecological transition. So this kind of stimulus we had today should force us to be more open. We need much more lateral thinking to face this ecological transition that we promised for the decarbonization. So let's see what we did. We organized 4 tables about the external stakeholder, about the education, ambitions of the young people. The 4 tables produced 4 documents that were unified. So they approved yesterday unanimously all the key messages, approximately 20 key messages, and we are committed to forward those key messages to the COP26. And the presence of Alok Sharma clearly shows that we're doing this for real. So the key messages will go to the COP26, together with background material, which is a longer document with more details, that the representatives will have a bit more time to make this really complete. But what is binding are the key messages. Okay, those are delivered. Good. Then there was a very strong request, super strong request, by the youth to be represented in the decision-making tables, in the decision-making events. I mean, their argument is very simple. We're going to be those who will be paying or will be undergoing the consequences of our mistakes now. So we want to be sure that we can contribute to the decision-making process. So there were many discussions. I think I can safely say, even though we still have to put these things written, that this will not be the last Youth for Climate event. It will be the first, possibly of a periodic series that will be hooked, will be following the COP 26, 27, the COP N, because we need to create a story, the story of the young people that are getting together before the COP, so creating an opinion, creating a pressure, a sort of movement. Third issue, we have to find a way to realize teams of representatives of the youth constituencies, I mean, kind of youngster representatives that can participate in the decision-making process. We got this commitment. We said, we will do this. Now we're going to discuss this in the next few weeks. You know, if I said this myself, would have been not strong enough. But Alok is here. Of course, we were in contact, and we wanted this pre-COP experiment, the Youth for Climate, really to be something new. The young people are accusing us. It's the usual stuff. You always promise, you always come with a written speech. I don't have any written speech. This is just handmade in real time. But they accuse us to repeat promises that will never come true. But I think today and yesterday and before yesterday, we gave an indication. We were completely greenfield when they started talking, and a lot of the proposals, ideas, provocations were received, elaborated, and now they are in what I'm telling you. Of course, there is room to do by far more. It's the first time we get all the young people together. We will do more, but I think this is really a milestone. Which are the key points where we have to work in the COP26, but outside the COP26, we have to work every day? Education, because it was raised the problem with education. I mean, we need a sort of global education towards the climatic change, towards the ecological transition. And of course, this cannot be just a school course. It would be different from country to country. So we need to think much bigger. We need to think kind of out of the box. But education has been pointed out by everybody. Financial aid, it's another super big problem. There is a major problem with infrastructure. You don't have electricity. There's 3 billion people having little access to clean fuel for cooking, and 1 billion people having no access, or around 1 billion, no access to electricity. How can we talk to these people in terms of decarbonization, hydrogen, renewable sources? I mean, we have a debt there. We have to infrastructure those countries. So financial aid means reducing the energy divide, the digital divide, the infrastructure divide. But also financial aid means reducing the gender divide, even the intergenerational divide. So this is something we have to think about. Of course, you've heard about the famous 100 billions. Alok, you were maybe in this circus before me, but I know that the 100 billions are promised since a long time. Okay, before the COVID, well, the COVID was a sort of interruption, but I think we reached 60 or so. Of course, the 100 itself is not enough, but it's better than 60. So we should keep the promise, hold the promise, and possibly we should do much more. There are projections by the financial people, and we know that much more money is needed. But at least let's try to keep the promise, the zeroth level. But this was obviously kind of underlying the entire discussion and the entire request of all the young people. The young people were asking also a fast track for representatives coming from underdeveloped countries. I mean, these people, they have, of course, problems in traveling, getting the permit, even the money for traveling. Somebody was asking some support for the use of English language. It is normally what is being used for official international events, because maybe they speak French, or they don't have enough English understanding, comprehension. These are little things, but we can really do something. I mean, even by digital support. So I was talking to many of these people. You know, something that was really exciting is that yesterday, myself, I've broken the protocol twice. And I said, okay, forget the program. Let's talk one-to-one, and give the microphone. You know, sometimes there are young people that are a bit upset, but in general it was very good. And I did the same yesterday evening. And today Alok said, I'll be here after lunch to talk to all of you. This was the most exciting and the most teaching part of the entire event. To be honest, all what I understood, and I hope I understood enough, came 90% from this one-to-one interaction. Because there was no written speech, it was just one-to-one. And then we were chatting by email last night. We exchanged email. I gave my telephone number and my email to many people. I just said, send me your ideas. This for me is like reading a book. I can learn. I mean, honestly, most of those things, you have to hear from those who are experiencing these things to understand how they are. It's not enough to read the newspaper or to read the books or to go as a tourist for 1 week. You really have to see and hear from the voice of these people. So fast track for the young representatives from vulnerable countries. We have to do this. Helping them to travel, for instance. Creating an official representative into the decision-making bodies, like in the COP26. Okay, this is of course a matter of governance, but I think we will do this. We have to find a way to have a permanent representative team of young people participating. Also to compensate intergenerational justice that today, I mean, I think, I was told, at least in Italy, but I think in many other countries, at least the rich countries, the new generations are the first who will very likely have a future worse than the parents. I belong to the generation that improved the situation of the parents. And I was living in a society that for many generations could see kids being, in general, on average, more lucky than the parents. More wealthier, you know, well, with a better job. Now, apparently, it's going down. So we have to make a thought about that. And I don't want to, because I don't know, I don't want to consider how difficult this should be in countries where, of course, economical situations, social situations are very, much more difficult. So this is the synthetic overview. But there was one very last time I want to tell you. There was an Austrian girl, and she made a point, she made an intervention this morning. And she said, how do you decide, generally speaking, how decision bodies can decide if even the data, when they're published, are old? I like this point. We are in the age of big data analytics, artificial intelligence, real-time analysis of whatever it happens, so we can predict when a single fly will be on my piece of bread. And we are not using those tools to be more predictive. The girl was maybe 25. She, as far as I understood, she has a startup. I could just talk 20 seconds while I was on the stage. But those are the bright ideas that are coming, and somehow also the provocations that are coming, and then we should adopt. We should think over. So as you see, as I'm not a good politician, because I'm still a researcher inside, and that's my nature since 40 years now, I kept this opportunity to learn. Whether I learned properly or not, I'm not sure, but many of the inputs were really very, very important, and I think we need to talk deeply around those things. Trying to make better. And the COP26 will be the first benchmark. And in the next 4 weeks, we will do our best to forward those ideas, information, provocations ahead. And the COP26 is going to be the first benchmark. That's why I'm so happy that Alok is here. And yeah, I can shorten your name. I'm sorry. Is here because, you know, they are really, they can make this possible. So I leave the stage to Alok first. And thank you for listening at my confession, let's say.
Roberto, thank you very much indeed. And actually, thank you for organizing this event with your team. I think it's been brilliantly organized. And the fact that we've managed to get young people here from across the world, many of them actually have had to make very difficult journeys to get here, I think it's testament to the organization, but also to the young people who have come here. I think listening to the sessions, I think there were probably sort of three feelings that I got. One was that it was incredibly inspiring. Secondly, that actually they spoke really very, very frankly. And I think the third, for me, was that, they spoke the truth, that we need to do much, much more, much faster. And I have to say, I hope every minister who was present, those who were tuning in, felt pretty uncomfortable and squirmed when those messages were being delivered, the truths, the home truths that were being delivered. And I think Prime Minister Draghi talked about the fact that what we were hearing shamed this set of world leaders. And there is no doubt that this group of young people, in fact young people around the world, are going to hold this set of world leaders to account if at COP26 we are not able to credibly say that we have kept 1.5 degrees within reach. Of that I'm absolutely certain. And one of the ministers who spoke also made a really quite important point where he said in 3 days, we have had 400 young people who never met each other before, very few of them will have met before, coming from almost 200 countries, were able to deliver a document in 3 days that they agreed on. Consensus, thank you, Jan. Consensus. And if we look at the Paris Agreement, 6 years on, historic agreement, but there are still key issues outstanding. And perhaps it's time at COP26 for the ministers and the politicians to take a lead from young people and actually find that consensus finally. Just reflecting on some of the messages that came through, I think, they were, in my view, they were really very, very well thought out. It's some of the issues that we have been discussing over the past year and a half through the COP process with Roberto and other governments as well, in terms of the issue of an energy transition, in terms of the finance flows, in terms of just transition, capacity building, getting the non-state actors to do their bit. So of course governments have to step up, and then actually showcasing the work that is going on. And I think Roberto is right. This is the start. This cannot be the last time that we get young people together and have this kind of discussion. And so I am very open to us, and Roberto and I will discuss this with our teams, is that how we build on this. I mean, this really cannot be a one-off, because if it is, I'm afraid it will not go down well with the young people who have come here today. Just in terms of COP itself, what we will be doing is taking these messages from young people. They will be discussed at COP. We will ensure that the outcomes are presented and that ministers respond to these outcomes, these decisions that have gone forward from young people. And this will take place on the Youth and Public Empowerment Day. We're also going to ensure that throughout the COP26 process, the voices of young people are heard throughout that 2-week period. There's a lot of expertise in that room. There's a lot of expertise internationally when it comes to understanding of nature, of science, transport, all of these issues. And we will ensure that young people's voices are reflected in those discussions at COP26 throughout that 2-week period. And I think the final thing I just want to say on this is that there were a number of times that the young people challenged us and said, you're not actually answering our questions. You're not actually responding to what we're asking. So Roberto and I have agreed that we will get the feedback that comes through. We will respond to the best of our abilities on those questions that have been raised. But actually, this is a question for every government. It's not just a question of Italy and the UK. Yes, we are together partnering and leading on organising COP26, but this is for every government. And I think that was very clear in terms of the response that young people require. Yes, it's an international response, but it's also a response that has to be delivered by individual governments in their home nations as well. And so I just want to end with saying that, yes, we have more work to do in terms of the NDCs, the 2030 emission reduction targets, the net zero targets, the finance. We're going to have a lot of discussions, Roberto and I, in the pre-COP now with ministerial colleagues on some of those outstanding issues in the Paris rulebook. And I hope the one thing that we will always have ringing in our ears is the voices of the young people that we've heard over these last few days. And I think if we keep those voices at the front of our minds, I do think we will have an opportunity to come to consensus together. But at the end of the day, it is on this generation of leaders, it is on us, it is on the people who are on the stage sitting there. I know, Ajay, you said you're putting it on the young people to tell us what to do. Of course, you know, we have to do our bit, but as I said, this goes back to us working together, and that's what I want to see coming out of this meeting. Thank you.
Would you like me to go? Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity, and very happy to be here also on behalf of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. My boss, I give his greetings and thanks for also inviting the Secretary General himself to present a message today to the young people who are present here. My name is Jatma Vikramanayaka. I am the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. I work as an advisor and a representative to the UN Secretary General on matters related to young people. So, of course, the climate action agenda is very high on my priorities, and we do work with many youth constituencies around the world to make sure that there is constructive dialogue between young people and policymakers at international, regional and national levels. I want to summarize some of the key things that I learned during this process as well, just like Minister Chingalani and Mr. Alok Sharma. First for me is really the gratitude for Italy for convening this gathering. I know that it's been said many times, but I think we should all acknowledge that it is not easy to organize a meeting of this scale during a global pandemic. Usually young people also face a lot of challenges when it comes to accessing visas to European countries, but Italy had really done an impressive job when it comes to working their embassies in countries to also secure that their participation is supported both politically and financially. I know that this work, this required a lot of work and a lot of resources, Minister. So I'm very grateful for this space that Italy created, an equal opportunity that you created for young people, not just from who can afford to be here, but for everyone to be here. And secondly, I also want to thank both of you for being here and for listening to young people. We have a lot of leaders who like to lecture young people, but not to listen to young people. So both of you being there today and bringing also your peers with you, other ministers of climate, other ministers of youth, other ministers of education, to really be in a listening mode, active listening mode, and to even pressure them to come up with concrete commitments, I thought was very impressive. Working at the United Nations, I know that usually ministers don't come for meetings unless they have a speaking opportunity, but today I was truly impressed to see a large number of ministers and high-level government representatives sitting and listening and taking notes from what young people have to say. So I thank you for creating this space and also pushing your peers as well to be respective of the contributions of young people. For me, one thing that is becoming clear and clear every day is that the mistrust between young people and governments are increasing more than ever and at a very high speed. And this is because young people continue to feel that their governments do not have the same priorities as they do, or that they do not represent the same urgencies or the same demands that they have as young people. Particularly on the climate crisis, there's a lot of frustration among young people around the world, a lot of anxiety that also contributes to mental health challenges among young people around the world. So I think we have to really understand why young people are behaving the way they are behaving. They're frustrated, they're tired of, as Greta said, blah, 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 and a lot of talking, but little action. generation. I think these type of spaces that are created to instigate a dialogue between young people and governments, young people and international institutions are extremely crucial to rebuild that trust and to make sure, as Alok said, that this is not one generation against the other, but it is really an intergenerational partnership, because we need the expertise, wisdom, and the power of the older generations, and the energy, the new ideas, and the bold creativeness of the young generations to come together to make the most sustainable solutions that they can own for the future. The second point as to why it is important to have events like Youth for Climate, where you create spaces for young people to come together, is we also live in an unprecedented moment in history where half of the world's population is under the age of 30. We live in a time in history where our world has not been this young ever before. 50% of the population of our world right now is under the age of 30, and more than 90% of these young people live in developing and least developed countries, those who are most affected by the climate crisis. So you cannot leave the voices of 50% of the global population behind when you make important decisions about our own future. So I think this has been very clear as to why young people need to be included in these discussions. Now, thirdly, I want to say that it's very important, as the Minister said, that these conversations do not stop here today. We often see when hosts are interested in making non-state actors inclusive or included, they create this type of opportunities. Italy has been very open in saying we want to bring in youth voices, and Alok has been saying he wants this COP to be the most inclusive COP ever, and he will bring diverse voices. And we just don't want this to be, because Italy had a good minister or this COP had a good president. We want this to be systematic. We want these voices to be institutionalized, for people to be able to have a continuous voice in making sure that their recommendations and their proposals are followed through, and also be a part of the implementation and be a part of the accountability. So young people are not only just asking to be heard before governments go to the negotiations, they also want to play a part as equal partners in implementing those solutions and being a part of the monitoring and evaluation as well. I'm not going to talk a lot about the outcomes, because I think both of our previous speakers have done so, but I think in terms of the ambition that young people have raised, for an example, reaching net zero before 2050, if possible, phasing out fossil fuels as soon as possible, climate financing, particularly the promises made by developed countries, the 100 billion, adaptation, resilience, loss and damage. These have been topics that we have really delved deep into in the past few days. We've spoken about energy transition, but just transition, so that we don't leave people behind in this conversation of transition. We spoke a lot about climate justice as a social justice issue. We spoke a lot about climate education being mandatory in educational curriculums. And then we, of course, spoke about the representation of young people in climate decision-making processes at the international level and at the national level. And I want to stop by saying Italy has created this space for Youth for Climate. The COP26 team will continue to create spaces for young people to participate in this COP. But the most important climate action really happens at the national level. And I think there is really no point if the only time young people get to meet their ministers is at the pre-COP or the COP. Ministers need to work with the young people in their countries when they design their national determined contributions, when they determine the national policies and programs for climate action in the country level. So really my plea to everyone who is here, and particularly the ministers, is it's good that you're here, that you listen to young people here, but the real work starts when you go back home. Make sure you listen to young people in your countries, in your communities, and integrate them in the national level and local level climate policy making and implementation. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Questions?
Do you want to give the floor to the two young people?
We have this. Yeah, we give the floor to the two young representatives. Yeah. Okay. So we have two young representatives. I think they're supposed to have something, and then it's on the podium, and then it will be open for questions by everybody.
Your Excellencies, dear organizers, dear representatives of the press, I am Vladislav Kaim. I am serving as the member of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, and in my capacity here at the Youth for Climate event, I was helping facilitate the work of the Sustainable Recovery Track as a bridge builder. I would like to begin my remarks, first of all, with gratitude towards the Italian government, the Office of the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and to the UK for assuring that so soon after the worst of the pandemic has subsided in most of the regions of the world, we were able to meet in person, because in-person contacts are crucial for substantive and productive work of climate activists all around the world. There was a lot told about the outcomes, of course, so I would not repeat on that part. There was a lot told about the hope and desire to continue the work that has been started. I would also like in my intervention to touch upon the lessons that we learned through our collective work and engagement at this conference so far. First of all, we learned how much proactive our colleagues are in our engagement and how they are passionate and at the same time efficient in their desire to assure equality of regional perspectives presented in the outcome documents. And here I would like to especially thank the colleagues from the Global South, particularly from the African region, who against many odds were trying to make sure that their perspective was assured to be present, as well as to those of the delegates who, for different reasons, were unable to participate in person and participated virtually. Unfortunately, so are the circumstances, and their potential, unfortunately, has not been used to the full, but they gave absolute best, their absolute best, and for that, I personally, I'm so thankful to them. There was a lot said by Your Excellencies about the work that is about to start from here and the desire for common work. I would like to point your attention to the fact that indeed from your standpoint, from your point of view, perhaps this is a start, but for us, the Youth for Climate is part of a continuous process of youth, voluntary, substantive youth engagement that has not stopped even during the pandemic. And thus, it is extremely important that in our further efforts, in the run-up to COP and after, we, as a high-level official told me yesterday, assure a unity of purpose when it comes to youth engagement, in as that we also use the existing instruments of youth engagement in a coherent way, together with what has been achieved and is about to be achieved after the Youth for Climate. And here I'm particularly referring to the 16th Conference of Youth that will start its proceedings right before the COP. I would like to conclude my remarks with saying that this experience, again, first after the pandemic, has revealed to us that the systemic inequalities that our colleagues are facing in their day-to-day activity, even when they are brought under one roof, they do not disappear just like that. It requires systemic work, and it requires the senior policymakers meeting us halfway, and I can assure you that on our side, on the youth side, we have gone more than halfway, and we are already on this road, not just as activists, not just as people who by virtue of our age can speak for ourselves, but as experienced professionals, as experts, as people who know how to put their insights into real action and into real policy points. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for welcoming me here and giving me the chance to speak at this platform. This is actually my first time speaking at an international conference, and I'm very excited. And I'm so thankful for the support of my colleagues. I I just wanted to say that thank you, Minister Cingolani, Ms. Jayathma, and Mr. Alex Sharma for highlighting truly highlighting an encompassing view of our needs and our wants. I think it was very encompassing of all the points that we gave and in the plenaries. I think that this Youth for Climate event was such a great opportunity for so many people and so many underrepresented people. For example, I am the delegate of Iraq, and I found it that many people from Middle Eastern countries, South Asian countries, and the Caribbean and South America are so underrepresented in this movement. And I think this event really, really gave us a new chance and for hope and for representing our countries, representing our youth, the youth of our countries, and bringing our thoughts and talents to the spotlight. I really hope that in the next COP35 that we will be working on maintaining the sustainable solutions that we would have implemented, and that in the next 10 years we would really have done something meaningful and a meaningful change. I think a lot of the time ministers and politicians are often demonized in the media for being corrupt or not wanting to help out. And from what I've seen today, it has been very inspirational, and I truly think that we feel your support, and I hope that we can trust you all to really get our message across to COP26, and for our proposals to be taken seriously, for youth to be taken seriously, and for us to have a seat at the table with you all. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Reem Al-Safar from Iraq. It's my mistake. I didn't introduce the two speakers. Vladislav Kaim from Moldavia and Reem Al-Safar from Iraq. Now it's open for question, and if you want to ask your questions, we're happy to answer.
No, ne abbiamo prenotati.
Okay.
We have Aska, Kiko. You have the microphone. Microphone is there.
La farò in italiano, mi perdoni Ministro, ma è una domanda per lei. Volevo chiederle, ha parlato di paesi vulnerabili prima. Secondo lei le democrazie sono più pronte rispetto ai paesi che non lo sono ad affrontare la transizione energetica?
So the question is whether democracies are best ready, more ready to face the ecological transition compared to less democratic countries. It's a difficult question, è una domanda molto difficile per ovvi motivi. Non credo ci siano risposte.
I don't believe we...
In a general answer. From case to case, da caso a caso, dobbiamo vedere, bisogna analizzare. In generale credo che nelle democrazie, soprattutto...
In general, I believe that in democracies, especially in those countries with good economies and less inequalities, it is easier to have measures.
Rather wealthy, with less inequalities, it should be easier to have resources and infrastructure to face the climate change. But this is a very general point of view. I mean, it's a very general statement. Dopodiché la geografia è molto complessa. The geography is very complex. I don't think I can answer yes or no. We should go case by case. Dovremmo analizzare i casi individualmente.
Channel 4.
Good afternoon, Fatima Manji, Channel 4 News. My question is to both of the ministers. It's great that you're both here at the press conference right now, but earlier today, when the prime ministers of both of your respective countries were addressing the main hall, the press were banned from entering. A small group of young protesters were forcibly ejected from the hall while they were conducting a peaceful protest. They told us outside that their passports were confiscated. This was quite a frightening experience for young people. So, Minister, does the Italian government really believe in freedom of press and the right to protest? And, Minister, is this what we should expect in Glasgow? Do you only want to listen to young people who smile and take selfies with you?
Okay, I answer the question. I don't know much more than you know because, as you have seen, I've been on the stage all the time. As far as I know, this was the safety system of the president, so it might have somewhat higher requisites of safety. I don't think anything happened later, so I think that this is over. I think asking whether this is what we want to see. Well, no, I don't want to see anything like an unplanned protest where we are talking. We were 3 days together. This was totally unexpected. I don't want to see any act of repression. I don't want to see anything like that, of course. I mean, I could say, what kind of question is this? And what kind of answer is mine? Obviously, none of us wants to see anything like that. What happens specifically, I believe, is due to the very rigid safety protocols in specific conditions. You have seen that all the roads around the site here were blocked. There was no violence whatsoever, as far as I know. In the end of the day, it was peacefully fixed. This is what I can say. I was on the stage. What I can say. I don't expect anything like that to happen, obviously. Yeah, that's all.
Well, I think the only thing I have to say is that, I personally am entirely supportive of peaceful and lawful protests. That's what, in democracies, you're able to do, and I support people's right to do that.
Another one. Sorry. Domani means tomorrow, and I said, why? There's another one tomorrow.
Yeah, we had a very bad name. Hi, I'm Lorenzo from Domani. I have two very fast questions about the document the young people discussed today. The first question is, they asked you to scale up the financial support for other countries. So I want to ask you, Minister Cingolani, how much money Italy will put in the help of other countries about the political transition? The second question I want to ask you, very fast I promise, is the most disruptive proposal they did, I think, in my opinion, is to phase out from fossil fuel until 2030. Do you think this is possible in Italy? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Both very, very interesting. The first one, Italy at the moment is globally putting 460 million contribution for the underdeveloped countries. This is under different channels, but globally. My specific this, of course, will be subject to decision within the government, is at least to double. We should reach around 1 billion. This can be done in many ways, including, investment funds, but for sure we have to double, because I think this is, it's even not enough. That has to be clear, but we have to do it. Second, about the proposals. The most disruptive, well, look, I think the most disruptive point here was that we agreed we have to make a periodic appointment every year, and we have to bring those key messages into the COP26 or any other decision-making table. To me, this was really the most exciting. Concerning the 2030 phase-out of the fossil fuel, this is highly desirable. I mean, I can tell you for Italy, I think I'm at the plan to transform 72% of our electricity by 2030 into renewable electricity. Today we're around 27 or so. So it's really quite a challenge. It means installing 70 gigawatt of power station, renewable power station in the next 9 years. That means 8 gigawatt every year, which is 10 times more than what we do now. It's a big challenge. You know what is my point? The more we do renewable, the more we need to stabilize the network, because the grid has to be smarter and smarter, and those sources are not controllable, as you know. So the dream, the wish, is that in the meantime, for instance, accumulation technology, so that doesn't need any other fossil fuel to be burned, grow and become cheap enough and reliable enough to guarantee, to ensure stability of the network. That would be ideal. So my answer would be yes, we can make it. I mean, maybe not 100%, but 80, 90% we can do it. Because in the end of the day, if you produce everything by by renewable energies, and you ensure the continuity by accumulators, in principle you don't need to burn any fossil fuel anymore. Now, whether the accumulator will become that solid, that cheap, and whether our electricity consumption will grow with that rate, or maybe we start growing like crazy for reasons that I ignore now. Those are numbers that we have to watch, monitor continuously. And obviously, right now, if you ask me in this moment, well, it's hard to get rid of the gas now because you need to give continuity. But we are really rushing, trying to transform the primary energy generation. And of course, you understand that if we increase the offer of green energy, immediately the demand of green energy will grow. So electric mobility, hard-to-abate sector in the manufacturing that are transformed into, let's say, gas-driven, hydrogen-driven, or electricity-driven. So I would say good hope, a lot of work to be done, and let's see what technology will provide. I hope I answered. This is, okay. I don't know what is the agreement.
From press and channel news and stop, sorry. From press, please. Okay.
Sì, due domande. We have two questions. We have now the ministerial starting, so we're late.
Sorry. France press? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Elie Bottolier from AFP News Agency. I have a question for Minister Sharma. We're 1 month ahead of the COP now, and there are still a lot of concern from the Global South, let's say, about whether they can get to Glasgow. We see that for the pre-COP here, some of the delegates from the least developed countries could not make it. So despite your assurance that for access to the vaccine and for funding the quarantine hotel, there are still some concern that many of the South representatives won't be able to come to Glasgow. So can you tell us how you can make any more progress to make sure that the COP will be inclusive? Thank you.
Great, thank you for that question. And look, I mean, I've said right from the start of this whole process that we want this to be the most inclusive COP ever. And that doesn't change because we are faced with the challenge of COVID. One of the asks, as you know, earlier this year was ensuring that we were able to get vaccines to accredited delegates who wouldn't have been able to get vaccinated in their home nations. So in June, at the G7, Prime Minister Johnson announced that offer. We opened the offer, and we've had people applying for that. We're working with the United Nations to ensure that those delegates that are not able to get vaccinated in their home nations are able to get vaccinated through our program, and I feel confident that that will be the case. The other issue that was raised was, again, it is the case that we are requiring anyone who comes from what we class as red list as part of our traffic light system of seeing where countries are.